Hey, what's going on? It's Bosco, and I'm joined here today with we got Zach over here.
Yeah, hi.
We got the one, the only Gaiduri Puzzo Vagelis.
Hello guys, happy to join today.
Yeah, and all right, so we're here today talking about a great movie, gem of the '90s.
American Psycho.
Yeah. So,
Released in 2000, actually.
oh really?
Yeah.
I
The movie itself takes place in the 80s.
I guess I'm just fucking wrong then.
I mean, the 90s or 2000 is pretty close to the 90s.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I don't know shit. Anyways, so
Stars Christian Bale.
one of my favorite actors.
Directed by Mary Herron. And is based on a novel that was released in 1991.
By Bret Easton Ellis.
Novel of the same name.
Yeah.
Also starring Jared Leto. That's cool.
Marry me, Barry. fuck Jared Leto.
What's wrong with Jared Leto? You don't think he gave a good performance in this one?
He's just, it's just when you know someone's a fucking cock in real life, it's hard to separate it from when you see him online. Like now, what I know he is, like, he thinks like he's this cult leader now with the fan suit of his band. I'm just like, come on now.
Well, maybe he's the American Psycho in
Maybe.
real life.
So I don't know, Zach. Why don't you start it off?
All right. Well, I love this film. I would consider it as one of my favorites. The movie itself is very dark and is very nihilistic in a lot of ways. So, if you've never seen it, the film centers on Christian Bale's character, Patrick Bateman, who is what you would call a yuppie. And if you don't know, yuppie means young urban professional.
I didn't even know that.
It means young urban professional, slang coined in the 80s to refer to the young, mostly men, coming out of business schools, Ivy League business schools that took over Manhattan, usually through banking and Wall Street.
Sell, buy.
Our former president, Donald Trump, is considered probably the most famous person to come out of the yuppie scene.
Well, like I said,
you
could also use the word socialite. You know what I mean? Being going out.
Well, part of yuppie culture, I think, is being a socialite.
Yeah, and and it's pretty obvious when you see this movie, but something we just caught on right away is that the whole movie's about not the whole movie, but part of it's about status, right? And the restaurants and places they go are basically just the famous card scene. I mean, it's all about showing trying to impress somebody, but you're basically just trying to they're all just carbon copies of each other. Basically, they're all kind of racist. They all don't have a fucking all Patrick Bateman and his coworkers and stuff, they all kind of have the same point of view, really, kind of, except Patrick Bateman's the one who's I think he's depressed.
I mean, I don't know if I would say depressed. I don't think depressed is a right word to describe this character, Patrick Bateman. I think if you think to one of the early opening scenes, him in his apartment, and he goes over his whole routine. He has a very rigorous routine that centers around maintaining his body, either through exercise,
exfoliating, no alcohol,
exfoliating gels in the shower, and facial cleansers and green tea masks and whatnot. But as he's going through all this, he tells you, he says, there is an idea of the person I want to be. There is this facade I maintain, the character who I play every day, the mask I put on in order to fit in and maintain my place in society. But deep down, I'm empty. I'm actually a shell. And he says, I simply am not there as he pulls off that mask, very kind of like, not so subtle, symbolism there as he pulls off the skin mask and reveals, it doesn't reveal like it's still the same face, but when you take a lot of this, Patrick Bateman is a very empty person. I don't know if I would say depressed. He's just more like empty hollow, a shell.
Hollow.
And
he's almost just like kind of just like an automaton, kind of in a certain way. Like he's just like going through the motions. He's just like, like you say, he's just trying to conform. He's trying to be the guy.
Exactly. Like like he tells his fiance in the car. You guys remember there's 2 Donald Trump references. I mentioned Donald Trump being there's 2 Donald Trump references in this film. But anyways, in the scene where he's first in the car with his fiance, she's talking about a wedding and getting married and blah blah blah. He's completely zoned out. He doesn't care. He's listening to music.
Yeah. And first off, how rude! Rude!
And,
I mean, you're in the same cab with her, and you're listening to your own music.
I mean, he says we can't have this wedding because I can't take the time off work, and she's like, why don't you quit? And he turns to her, and he's like, because I want to fit in, and I feel like that is very. That message carries on throughout the entire movie. Like his the facade, the mask he wears is constructed in a way that he feels like he can best be accepted and fit in to this kind of bleak, dreary social class, place he lives in.
Well, like one of the things I just kind of was thinking about, like in the beginning when you see his social circle and all that, is that you just kind of see that there's not like a lot of substance. Like whatever they're talking about, it's just like, they're talking about, politics or whatever because they want to show off that, they read the paper or, they want to, it's all about just like bitter, like small little jabs at each other to try to work up this like corporate ladder, but they're all basically at the same level.
Well, his friends are the ones that make the anti-Semitic remarks in that early opening scene at the restaurant.
Yeah, and Patrick argues with him because
he snaps back at him, telling him,
but then he's
cool it with the anti-Semitic remarks.
Yeah, but he was only doing that because like I said, he's a neolib.
I mean, look, without getting in the neoliberal politics, I don't necessarily. I mean, he's living in Reagan ushered in neoliberalism, or Carter actually, but Reagan really brought forward the full strength of neoliberalism. But I think and at a future dinner when they like bring up massacres in Sri Lanka and whatnot, like Patrick brushes that off and then goes on to kind of go on like I wouldn't call it neoliberal, but he goes on like almost a weirdly like performative liberal rant about how we have to better society and
we have to feed people. They're hungry,
and a lot of it I think it plays into this facade, the characters, the part of the mask, having this awareness, social awareness. It's like early an early version of political correctness.
Being woke.
Being woke, that he tries to put forward that he believes will make him look like he's well-read, well-educated, and, in touch. But really it's all meaningless to him. None of it, it's all an act. It's all performative.
Right. Because he's like, this is just the kind of mindset I have to have if I live in this like cultural subgroup, First, before we like kind of pick through the plot and like go through it, I just think first off we should talk about like, the ending of the movie pretty much, is like, it gives you this, it leaves you off being like, is this real or is this not real? Right. We got to discuss that first before.
Okay.
So, I think I was trying to like keep in my mind, think about when are the times where he's truly genuine? Like when are the times where I feel like this is the real him? And I honestly think it's the moments where I think he does like the little snaps that he does like all the times in public where he's like, oh, I'll fucking snap your neck off, you're ugly, like you're a fucking bitch, you know what I mean? You know what I mean, like all that shit. And he's like, I think like he is actually doing that, but I think the whole movie is just like, no matter what crazy shit he does or say, like everyone just kind of just like doesn't really respond or react to it. It's like, it's almost just like they're kind of just like dismissive of anything that's just not what's accepted in their little, you know, their little group.
Yeah, well, I agree. That's an interesting recurring motif in this film. Is occasionally Patrick Bateman will have like admissions of like what's going on in his head, whether it's early in the film when he's talking to the bartender and she won't take the tickets he has, and she turns around and finalize the payment, and he's like, you're an ugly bitch, I want to stab you and play with your guts, you know. And then other times, like when he tells his friends at another dinner that like I
gotta commit mass murder on a large level.
Occasionally he'll admit it like out loud, and like people don't seem to notice, and either it's because it's just what's going on in his head and it's presented as him saying it out loud, either that or there's like a greater metaphor for how perhaps the world at large, society might turn away from these kind
society
of
bomb.
These kind, like we choose to turn a blind eye to it, you know, we choose to like not believe that this is happening or believe that this is what's going on in people's heads, and they, you know, you voice it out loud and people are just like, okay, whatever, and they act like they didn't hear it, they don't acknowledge it. You know, what he's doing, I think, is trying to voice what's going on inside of him, and it's not being heard by anyone around him, which I think furthers his spiral.
Of course, I gotta say, we don't agree with his methods of dealing with that social anxiety. It's, you know, he's a fucking murderer.
Now, why would we agree with that?
Yeah, we wouldn't.
Being a serial killer, hot take.
So one of the things I wanted to bring up was like Dorsia, right? Because Dorsia, the restaurant, it's this restaurant that gets brought up. Doesn't matter.
Many restaurants are named. Almost every restaurant they go to is either named not outright, but it'll say the name of the restaurant either somewhere on a menu or on a sign, or they'll mention
it's all branding.
They'll mention the restaurants in some way. So almost every place that they visit
name
is
drop.
named.
Name drop. It's all about name.
I don't know if they're
drops.
real places that are actually in Manhattan, but almost everywhere they go is named.
Yeah. Anyway, so Dorsia is basically like it represents like the pinnacle of like societal status in this little group, right? And
that's the ultimate goal.
The yuppie goal is to get
reservations at Dorsia.
Right. And the beginning of the movie, which I honestly think is the thing that set him off, is when he called and he tried to get a res. But like, I mean, like, let's be honest, all right? The guy called midday trying to get a reservation at a packed restaurant. What'd you think?
The guy just starts laughing to him on the phone.
Yeah, he just laughs him off. And I think, you know, that has to do with like the greater part of the movie that, you know, everyone, you know, seems to not recognize Patrick Bateman. They don't even know who he is. And they just like, oh yeah, he's a dork, or he's a, you know, because he's probably kind of an introvert, or, you know, and just kind of, you know.
Well, like, if you notice in one of the earlier, like, again, I think the idea with the restaurants is it's all relates back to status. Having a reservation at Dorsia puts you at the top of this social ladder that they live in. And even when they go into an early one, he goes in and he's like, I'm nervous because I'm worried we're not going to have a good table. But relief washes over me when I see that it is a good table. I don't remember the exact wording, how he put it. But, like, it's all about getting a good table, a good reservation at the best restaurants in order to assert some type of social class dominance in some way in this. Yeah, like this, I believe this society Patrick lives in is completely devoid. Here, I mean, I don't know if you wanted to continue discussing that.
I do actually. I do actually. Well, I think it kind of leads into the card scene. With the business cards, probably the best scene in the movie. Let's be honest.
The
most iconic. Other than maybe the you like Huey Lewis? Other than that scene, yeah. But the scene, I think it just shows like, Patrick, he wants to like stand out in some way. He wants to like, like be different than these people. He wants to be like, he wants to think like he's different than them, right? Because he's like, he's.
I disagree. I don't think he wants to be different.
No,
I
sorry.
think he wants to fit. He says it explicitly.
Well, yeah, you're right. Sorry, that's not what I was trying to say.
It's about the pleasures of conformity.
Yeah, you're right. It is about that's not what I was actually meaning to say. What I was meaning to say is, cut here, was that, it's all about just like, but even though, he's trying to conform, it's all about jockeying and who gets the biggest reaction, right? That's what I was trying to say, is that, it's all about like garnering the biggest clout from the group think, right? It's all about, which one's gonna make everyone go nice. Yeah. Oh, but Lorraine's lettering, yeah, it's bone.
Well, okay. If we're gonna discuss the business card scene, I love that scene, because literally, I think a part of what plays into Patrick Bateman's anxiety, although he doesn't notice it, I don't think, is how much everybody's alike. And, well, I mean, that's kind of what he wants. But if you notice there in the business card scene, you watch it as a viewer and it's like all the cards look the same to you. But like when they show them, they're like, see, that's a bone, or that's eggshell, that's pale nimbus, and referring to different shades of white. Or
all
just
different flavors of mayo.
A little bit difference in the font, and they like lay it all out, and it's just about choosing these like little subtle differences to try and, conform, but be to the highest level of conformity in some way, to conform to like the standard business card. And what's funny is also they all say vice president on it. They all the cards say the exact same thing.
Vice president must be a meaningless position. It really
all the cards say the exact same thing except the name on the card,
right.
Which, is aside the point.
Happy little cogs. Happy little cogs.
But it's just about like reaching this pinnacle at the top of this chain of conformity and alignment in all, having the similar look, having the similar status, but like trying to be at the top of this conglomerate of everything being the same and trying to reach some pinnacle in that. And I guess that's where Patrick's frustrations are, is, some Van Patten prefers the other card, someone else's card to his. And then when he finally sees Paul Allen's card, which apparently is the best one, even though it looks again like the exact same. And then he drops it, and that's where he's like, oh, Paul Allen, I have to be Paul Allen. And earlier in that scene, Paul Allen comes in and talks to him, and he mistakes him for someone else. Patrick doesn't correct him, which I find very interesting. Throughout the film, Patrick will be mistaken for other people.
Right.
He doesn't necessarily correct the people he's talking to until the end when he's talking with the lawyer.
I have a theory about that. I think it's because he's like, he's like self-aware, and he realizes he's like, it doesn't even matter. Mm-hmm. It doesn't even matter.
They're all the same.
Yeah, they're all the same. Yeah, we're all the same. We're all, and it's just, I think groupthink too is like because this movie is about anxieties and stresses of conforming into like a business environment like that, like being a Wall Street guy, Wall Street VP, where there's fucking 10 VPs. I don't understand.
Everyone's a vice president at this investment firm.
You're a vice president.
It's a meaningless title. It's again
the vice president
to connect to this idea of meaninglessness and nihilism that's throughout the film.
Yeah,
they're all meaningless titles. Like none of it. The vice president doesn't mean anything. It's just something they hand out just to make you, I guess, feel a little better about your position in the company.
So I want to still stay on the same subject of like status, because like I said, this is like one of the biggest themes in the movie, is that how women are viewed in this movie, because women in this movie are all there. It's like, okay, you have to have your steady and then your mistress, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's, but like even that in and of itself is like, oh, it's like, oh, well, he's sleeping with her, and like, you know, oh man, yeah, she's real hot, and you know, even before, I mean, these guys don't have like the best view on women. They're like, there's no woman with a good personality.
Well, one interesting thing I took note of in regards to women in this film is it feels like all the women kind of look the same. They're all, majority of them, blonde and white and very similar looking.
But think about the one that he's drawn to, which is the guy the guy Lewis's girl.
Do you think that's the one he's into?
Yeah, because
I think the girl he's into the most is the his assistant.
Maybe
they all look the same though, right?
Maybe because he sees like a little bit of the same, like he shares the same sentiment of being lost in this world, kind of with his assistant. I think
maybe
because he was gonna straight up murder her. I mean, he was holding the fucking nail gun right to the back of her head. But no, I think that one, because you know, I think it's a weird, you know, like that being his like I said, Lewis's fiance. Because she is like, the thing that he mentions a lot is that, you know, she's just basically doped up all the time, right? And I mean, like, how much with these affluent white communities where there's like, you know, kids like that who like they just live in New York and they get high and they get, you know, their parents' money, you know what I mean? Like, I think it shows like a depression of like living in that, like I said, that subgroup, you know, the socialite. You know, it's vapid. There's nothing of substance. You know, so of course they're gonna be fucking high.
Yeah, I think drugs and alcohol play a very subtle role in this film, but they are present in when he takes his mistress to what he claims to her is Dorsia, but is a different restaurant. It's shown on the menu. It's not Dorsia. She's doped up on whatever she said, lithium or Valium or something like that. Xanax, something like that. When he takes Paul Allen back to his place, and Paul Allen's completely aware that he's basically in a kill room. Paul Allen's wasted. Right. When he has the prostitutes in his apartment in a later scene, he puts what looks like Molly into their drinks. They do the cocaine in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. Like, the drugs have a very subtle, like, it's almost like it's so subtle that like
it's like expected.
Nobody takes note of it. Again, it's like him making his statements about murder. Nobody is objecting to it. Nobody's, you know, condemning it. It's like subtly just there. And even towards the end, he's taking a lot of pills. He takes pills when he's on the phone.
The more and more I'm thinking about this movie is a real nihilistic movie when you think about it. Like, it really is. Like, the more I'm just thinking about it, it's like, yeah, they're just like, you know, I'm not saying, you know, this is the case for all people, but they're doing drugs because like they're just so bored. Like, the thing I noticed is that whenever they go to all these different places, like as a group, it's like, it's not like they're having a great time. It's like, it's almost like they're like bothered to be there, but they want to be out. You know what I mean? It's weird.
It's all meaningless. What it is it's what is expected of them in that world. It's like what you do to fit in, and none of it has any true meaning behind it. Doing the drugs or doing whatever. It's not like doing drugs in real life has a whole lot of meaning either. But I think it plays a role in this emptiness of this world that Patrick Bateman and that he exists in, you know, just the nonchalantness in taking drugs and the casualness of it.
Well, I think we can both agree the guy's a sociopath, right? Because he like you said, he feels no feelings other than, what was it? It was greed and...
He says greed and disgust. Those are the only two things he can feel.
Right, go on.
Real quick, I will connect the idea of the meaninglessness and the nihilism back to women. Again, like I said, all the women kind of look the same and play a very similar, like, deer in the headlights role almost, and they all seem there just to be like almost pieces for the men in this film. In fact, in so many of the scenes, it's like the way Patrick directs women. Like every scene, whether he's out at dinner and he tells them what to order.
It's all about control.
Yeah, he
it's
tells
all
them
about,
what to order.
Yeah.
It's like they're not even a people. It's
Right.
like they're more just like tools, props. They're props there in this meaningless world. How he directs the prostitutes how to have sex, how he orders food for them, how he tells his assistant how to dress. It's like they're not even humans to him in this world. They're more just set pieces in this empty void of existence that he lives in.
No, just sorry. I was just thinking about when you mentioned the ordering for them, where he's like, order this. I read in the Times that it's a delight.
It's a playful little dish.
Playful little dish. You know what I mean? Like, he is a dork. You know what everyone always says about him? He is kind of a dork, because if you were around a person like that who's just like, you should have this. It's a tasty little dish. I read in the Times. You'd be like, hey, go fuck yourself, fucking dildo. Anyway, yeah, Van, do you got any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I guess since we're on the topic of like the women in the role.
Oh,
like,
this is where Van jumps in. Now this is where he feels passionate.
No, I was
Go for
say,
it.
Yeah, they are like, you know, like you said, like they're like props or objects, and it kind of almost makes you think like that he just he has no value for them, and it's almost like they're just a tool in his belt. Like there's nothing really behind them.
Right. Yeah. You know, I mean, like, it's. What do you?
Doesn't mean anything to Patrick. Like nobody's lives really means anything.
What do you think about like okay? This is something I was thinking about. What do you think about like the whole thing of him like going to get the street, you know, the girl walking the street, and then being like, okay, we're in a relationship. Your name is Brittany, and you're gonna go in there. We met at Yale.
He went to Harvard Business School, actually.
Whatever.
He said, well, when William Dafoe
as
the detective interviews him and he brings up Yale, he's like, you know, that whole Yale thing. Like, he kind of looks down on Yale.
Skull and Bones.
Well,
he's probably a closeted homosexual.
It's a status thing again, because he went to Harvard Business School, and even though, you know, to everybody in the world, you look at Yale and you're like, oh my god, Yale. But like to him, as a status thing, he looks down on Yale, and he's like, "Yeah, you know that whole Yale thing." And
you know the Yale thing, and the cops like, "What are you fucking talking about, dude? I'm just a guy." So I think you know, let's see what else I got here.
I have a question that I would like to pose.
Go for it.
In regards to the greater theme of this film of emptiness and nothingness. So this is kind of a nature versus nurture question. Is Patrick empty because the world around him is empty, or is it because we're viewing this through Patrick's perspective? Does he himself, because he's empty, does he make the world around him empty?
No, I think
the world itself is empty. Society's empty, and that he is empty because of the world he lives in. It's not who he is. That makes everything empty.
I mean, when people always bring up the nature versus nurture argument, I always opt for it's always a little both, right?
Of course,
right. But I think in this case, I would say more so he's empty because of the world he lives in. Because like when I was paying attention to like the interactions between the people all in this group, and I was just like, it's just so vapid. You know what I mean? There's like it's mundane, but it's like cocksure, maybe. You know what I mean? It's
like a culture.
Yeah.
It's like a culture of just like one-upping while like one-upping each other in various aspects of life. But really they're not progressing, and they're not really doing anything for their character or life.
Yeah, they're just you know, they're just living. They're just, you know, they're all the same, really.
Patrick even says that at the end. He says, after he has his big confession and everything, where he says it at the end, where he's like, this confession means nothing to me. I feel no catharsis, no relief. all of this has meant nothing to me. You know, he's no growth. He says, I've learned nothing. I've grown. I've gained no further insight of myself.
Right. Well, because this whole movie's about like I think it's an inward journey. You know what I mean? Like, of course, like what I was saying to you at the end is like, you know, this movie's all about like, it's about him like rejecting society, but in like the worst possible way. You know, being a like, you know, a murderer and, you know.
Again, I'll disagree. I don't think he's rejecting society. I think he really, really wants to fit into society.
Right, but in a way, like, okay, he wants to conform, but obviously, like, he's not conforming by murdering because, you know, it's, but, you know, the one thing where I will agree with you, though, is, like, with the scene with the lady after he goes back to the apartment and then she looks at him and she, like, so that almost gives credence to it is real. Right, or maybe you know he did some weird fucked up shit in the apartment. Maybe he didn't murder, but you know.
I mean, because the question can be asked: how much of this is in Patrick's head? Are these just fantasies he's having as a way of coping and dealing with this idea? I wrote down this one thing, and he mentions Ted Bundy a couple times in the film. And there's a Ted Bundy quote,
and
I believe,
and Ed Gein he brought up too.
Yeah, well, in more regards with Ted Bundy, he brings up the serial killers. I heard this on last podcast on the left. Ted Bundy said something along the lines of, the condition of the modern American is to be invisible. And I feel like that's something that Patrick is dealing with throughout this movie, that he, I think, feels invisible and feels unnoticed. In fact, like, you know, how people constantly call him the wrong name and this and that. And part of me wants to say that a lot of this is either some type of hallucination or just like mental masturbation as a way to cope and escape from this feeling of like being invisible in this society that he lives with, being a meaningless person. And that these murder fantasies, these psycho fantasies, is just there as a way to make him feel like he can stand out, you know, feel like he's being noticed in some way, or having some effect on the world. You know, I think also, you know, he's without purpose, you know, and, you know, the world is kind of blind to him, or at least he conforms so much that he blends in to a point where he's you know, unnoticeable.
Right. And, you know, and it's like, it's almost like, weirdly, you never see him, like, them do actually any work. You never see him do any work ever. Like,
I mean, he does a crossword puzzle at one point.
Oh, yeah, where he just writes, like, bones,
meat,
flesh.
And he does a lot of doodling.
Let me tell you, man, he does a lot of doodling. And like on par with like that. Go on.
I was gonna say he also watches a lot of porn, so
yeah.
I just thought it was interesting when he recorded when he was with the two women.
Yeah,
and it was like he was creating his own stardom, but he's also.
I
guess in his own mind, he's a star, but he's
weirdly the whole time during that scene, he was like looking at himself in the mirror, and like I love that when he points out to himself in the mirror, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm looking at you, kid. Yeah."
I know there was definitely a little like egomania going on there.
Yeah, for sure.
And almost like he was like pleasuring himself to the image of him being what he wants to be. Yeah,
well,
he's massively self-absorbed, and I'm glad you brought that up, Van, because I think a big thing that his interaction with sex shows is that he's very detached. He watches porn casually, like it's background noise to him, the porn.
He was,
and even while he's having sex, he's not focused on the sex itself. He's focused on himself. He's very detached and just so self-absorbed that like even, you know, an experience like sex is something that he takes no pleasure in, that it's nothingness to him.
Right.
And it's more just he's desensitized and detached from the world around him. The only thing he cares about is himself. When he puts on the Whitney Houston song for the prostitutes, he mentions something at the end where he's like, you know, she's talking about how
we can't ever share experiences with others. The only one we can empathize with is ourselves. You know, we have to focus on ourselves and empathize with ourselves. You know, I think that's him kind of trying to reach out for anything in this void he lives in. And the only thing, nothing concerns him. He's detached from others, detached from experiences, desensitized to it all. And the only thing that he has is just what he's barely clinging on to inside of him, which is the psycho, but,
Right.
you know, the self-absorbed psycho, but...
So, since you brought up music,
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to talk about, like, the music, because music's, like, very important. First off, love Huey Lewis in the News. Okay, so I answered his question. Do you like Huey Lewis in the News? Yes, very much so.
Paul Allen just shrugs.
Yeah, he just shrugs. He's like, I don't care. But I think it's the point of it is like all the artists, like, you know, that he's like listening to, like Robert Palmer, The Police,
Walking
Phil
on
Collins,
Sunshine.
yeah, Walking on Sunshine. It's all like music that I think if you were an alien, you would just be like, oh, I think this is what people like right now. You know what I mean? It's all very likable music, right? It's all very, you know, mass appeal type. You know, not saying it's bad. I'm just saying like it's a lot of very like pop somewhat music. You know.
Interestingly enough, the music is an interesting.
But it speaks to him. It speaks to him.
It is one of the few things in the world that he is somewhat in touch with and somewhat connected with. Like, out of all the things that he's detached from, like, music is the one thing he finds at least some type of relation with kind of can absorb himself in.
What is it that he says when he's listening to Huey Lewis and Zach? He's like, it's about the stresses of, about the joying of being conforming. Or,
yeah. Hip to be square. I mean, the song's called Hip to be
Hip
Square.
to be square,
You know,
yeah.
it's about the pleasures of conformity. I think that what the music does for him is it helps him in a weird way remain detached, because he can listen to the music and apply his own nihilistic and detached and perverted interpretation of it and kind of lose himself in the music. You know, he's talking with his fiance, he doesn't listen, he's got his headphones and he goes into the office, he's not paying any attention to anything, Walking on Sunshine's blasting. In a way, it kind of, it's the one thing he allows himself to become absorbed in, you know, in this world of nothingness that he lives in. The music is the one thing that he can allow himself to become fixated on and absorbed into. And that's why, like, you know, anytime he plays a song for somebody, he has like some long winding interpretation of it. You know, obviously it's something that he connects with. Right,
but like, you know, weirdly enough is you know, he does like you say, like, warp the meaning and the lyrics of the song to, like, you know, kind of, you know, I don't want to say
fit his
interpretation, right? But weirdly enough, I think the time where he's the most honest about it is when he's talking to the detective, and he's like, when he pulls out, you know, he's like, oh, I just got this Huey Lewis, you listen to it? And he's like, no, I don't like singers. He said that, and I'm like, I think that's like, it's kind of like, you know, I think it's just like he likes the music as a thing. He doesn't like you know what I'm saying? Like, he doesn't like music as an art. He just likes it as like kind of a thing to fill the void.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like something to fill the void. It's something to just other than just nothingness.
Kind of like the drugs too.
Yeah, exactly. It's just something other
or
than
the
nothingness.
Sex, the porn.
Exactly.
It's all just filling the void.
Yeah.
The hollowness.
So
the shell that is Bateman and the society that he lives in.
So I don't know. Like I think you know, talking about all this, I think it's not, you know, I think like feeling like, you know, kind of lost in like society like that, I think that's very relatable, you know, like as far as like kind of just like the feeling Patrick Bateman has, as far as like, you know, like just being like, you know, it's all nothing, you know. I can you know, I can relate with that, you know. Sometimes you just feel like you're going through the motions, and, you know, yeah.
And your work and the people around you, be it friends or girlfriends or anything like that, is just, it's just there to help you fit in, and
Right.
and the only thing that you can find in a world that presents nothing to you is essentially just a rat race, I guess, to use a cliche
Right.
played out term. But I think this term arose in the 80s when this film takes place in the Reagan era of just like, you know, maintain arbitrary social circles, you know, make money and, you know, exist basically.
Just
exist.
Yeah.
And, you know, never let that mask slip. You know, that's I think, you know, his main goal and how he presents himself to the outside world is like, don't let that mask fall down. Like always be there, you know, present, trying to climb that social ladder,
Right.
you know, but
I mean, but there's a lot of people in life like that who just, you know, they just want to fit in, you know, and I feel like yeah, there is an external pressure to just fit in, you know. I mean, like
and work would be a big thing for that.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
you know, maintaining a good job, having a good income, getting married.
Yeah,
you know, doing all
you're
that.
starting to sound like the beginning of Train Spotting.
Yeah, well,
but you know, it's like you know, just extrapolating my own life. It's like when, you know, I work for you know, the county, and my dad, you know, he's always constantly being like, oh, you know, why don't you just get like a job at like FedEx? And I'm just like, why just FedEx? What, that's more respectable? That's just fitting in more? You know, if he just had you know what I'm saying? Like, that's to him what he views as just something to just fit in more, because what I'm doing is not, which I don't see it that way. But, you know what I mean? There is like kind of like an external pressure to just kind of fit in, you know?
I agree, yeah. And I think Patrick Bateman exists in this world that those external forces tell him that, hey, what you need to do in order to be successful is maintain this good job, have a steady girlfriend and side pieces, get married, you know, be successful in your line of work. And I feel like, you know, that's what he believes he has to do in order to climb the social ladder and be successful, is to play by these rules,
Right.
but that these rules have made him a nobody like everybody else around him.
Right.
That, you know, playing by these rules and, you know, being perpetually in the middle management, the vice president position, makes you a ghost in the world you live in. And,
Right.
you know,
You make no meaningful impact on the world.
I mean, until you become the psycho killer.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what he does in
That's what
order
he
to
does,
break
yeah.
through
That's what he,
these chains that constrict you and pressure you into living a certain way, but also make you hollow and a replica of everybody and all the lives around you.
That's interesting. You view it as chains. I agree with that. You know, it's almost weird that like just going with the flow and conforming in a way where, you know, you're at, like, if that's what you honestly want to do, fine. But I think a lot of times, I think there's people who lie to themselves and say that's what they want, is they want to just do the things that everyone says that you should do, you know, get a good job, have, you know, get married. What's that?
Exist comfortably, basically.
Exactly.
You play by the rules, and your main goal is to be successful in your work and in the social, on your respective social ladder. You become a clone and therefore invisible.
Right.
So is the implication in this film the only way to break through that is to become a psycho? To release yourself from the hollowness and the emptiness of modern life, is the only way to do that is to give in to your most primal urges and become the psycho? Is that the way to break these chains?
I don't think. I mean,
No?
I think for him, I think it's.
I mean, this is obviously the movie's a very extreme metaphor for that. I'm not saying go out and become a psycho killer in order to stand out
but
from the hollowness.
It's more. I just think about those upper crusty groups of folks, and I'm just like, yeah, you know, fuck all y'all.
Well, that's how Patrick Bateman feels.
Yeah.
I really did like the symbolism. I noticed with when he's on the phone and there's like a door behind him at the restaurant that says "This is not an exit," and it's kind of almost like the theme of like where he's at. Like he thinks this might kind of be his exit of his life by becoming this psycho, but in a way he's only just, I don't know, like he's only really changed his own outlook of what, like. He's still stuck, but now he's like, look what I've become, and
he's even deeper in the hole.
It's just messed it up more, and there's no.
Yeah, I mean, his lawyer, after Patrick has to keep on reassuring him that he did actually do it. The lawyer kept on laughing him off, and until he turns and he goes like, "I'm not liking this conversation anymore."
I think that's interesting what you brought up, Van. I think that through his actions of being the psycho, he thought maybe that was a way to escape. This is the escape he's looking for. And then at the end, none of it's acknowledged, whether it's returning to Paul Allen's house and the realtor's like, no, nothing happened here. Please leave now. Please leave. And she kind of like, it's almost like she knows what happened there. But then there's like, it's like nothing happened. Nothing happened. Move on. And then he goes to the lawyer and he's just looking for a way to be like, I don't know, he wants to get caught at the end. He wants to use these killings as a way to break out of it. He goes to the lawyer. The lawyer thinks it's a joke. He thinks he's somebody else. He thinks it's a joke.
Right.
The lawyer laughs him off, and even as he's there begging him, pleading, he's, I'm Patrick Bateman. I'm not Davis, and I'm serious. And the guy's just like, this isn't funny. And then he walks away. And then and that's when he goes and sits down. And like Van said, that's when the sign behind him says, this is not an exit. I think, he was looking for an escape out of this void he lives in. And no matter what he did, even doing the most extreme stuff, if we say that it is real and not a hallucination, didn't break him out of it. It's not the exit he looks for. And then at the end, he sits there, and they ask him about whether Reagan is hiding this, as he, tells about the Iran-Contra affair. Is he hiding the psycho? And they turn to him.
I don't remember.
Expecting him to have his political meanderings as he did earlier, and he's just like, whatever. And then it goes out on his ending monologue where he says, this confession means nothing. I've learned nothing.
Right.
And everything's meaningless is essentially what his ending monologue is, and there's no exit for him. He's going to continue to exist in that void that he's born into or exist in.
No, the one thing that I that stuck out to me out of all the things he said was, inside doesn't matter. Inside doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who you are on the inside. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter that he's not... he's not Davis or Markstrom or, what Paul Allen.
And he was happy to accept all those monikers.
Yeah, he didn't even second guess it, He
didn't correct anybody on any of that.
No, he didn't, because I think intuitively he knows that. He's like, he's a nobody, And I can relate with feeling like a nobody. I feel like a nobody sometimes.
Is there an exit?
That's why we're here. So yeah, let's go into our final thoughts.
Okay.
All right, I'll go first. Or Van, actually, since you're the guest, why don't you go first?
I guess overall, like I really like the story, and that Christian Bale was on point the whole times, and
As
I
always.
really like the director's camera work, like his transitions, and I'd say personally I'd give it a 9.
That's solid.
Towards a 9.5. Like
Okay. You're saying damn near perfect. All right, Zach, you want to go?
All right. Well, this was one of my favorite films, so perhaps I'm a little biased. But I love the ideas of the void that he lives in that I have spoken about. I think it's a very nihilistic film, and I myself find myself to have many nihilistic tendencies in how I view the world and a lot of things. Funny enough, there's a lot of jokes online and whatnot about quote-unquote society films, a recent one being like the Joker, there's a lot of, quote-unquote society films. I think this one stands above a lot of them.
Oh, definitely.
The only one that maybe you could compare to is something like Taxi Driver,
but I think that I like this movie because it represents the shallowness and the hollowness of modern life, and how you may struggle at your work, struggle at your job, play by the rules but not really get anywhere and remain unsatisfied, and how you might fight or try your best, wear your mask. Everybody wears their mask. I like that idea in this film of wearing the mask in order not to reveal the true self, in order to fit in. How we become detached from everyday experiences, everything from sex to our friends and the people around us. And I took down an interesting quote that he says with the detective, and I think that it kind of sums up, I think, how Patrick feels
I know what you're gonna say,
about the world. And when the detective was like, "So you think Paul Allen just disappeared?" He says, "Sometimes the earth just opens up and swallows people."
Damn.
And I think that is a quote that I think summarizes what I believe to be the main theme of this film, is that society, the world, culture, the country we live in, it swallows, it makes you invisible, and sometimes it just swallows up and you just disappear, and we're all nobodies at the end of the day. And we all might have these inner urges and whatnot, and we keep our masks on in order to hide them, and sometimes those masks slip, but then we carry on somehow. But anyways, I love the nihilistic themes of this film. I like the hollowness of it, and it's one of my favorite films in regards to just a social commentary on everyday life. And I would definitely also give this film about a 9. So again, I said it's one of my favorite films, but I love this one. Christian Bale's awesome in it too.
Yeah,
so.
He is, as he is in many things.
Yes.
All right, so I've always really liked this movie. I've always thought it's a very it's a very interesting take, but it's a very interesting movie. But the thing that really interests me is, I think, this is gonna be shocking coming from my lefty point of view, but I view this as kind of like a statement against capitalism in a way, because capitalism in a way led Patrick Bateman to feeling like he's a nobody, feeling like the earth just, and it's funny enough, what do they always say about communism? It's like, oh, you're gonna lose the individual, you'll lose the, you'll just be, but in reality, fucking capitalism has done that. And
wait, quick question in regards to that, because I said, the American condition is being invisible. Maybe perhaps it's the economics, the capitalism that makes one invisible. Right.
And that's honestly how I feel about it, and I feel like that's one of the things that I think we can all probably take from it, is that capitalism in a way has just the constant, what does he say? He says, he's like, the only feelings I feel are greed and disgust, right? Greed, getting ahead, he went to Harvard, right? That's what he said. And the whole thing is so you would think on the surface oh, this is a successful guy, but the life he's living is meaningless, right? He did all the he did all the things he was supposed to do, but it just didn't end up turning out the right way. I think I'm just quoting the Suicidal Tendencies song at this point.
Well, just one more quick thing. Yeah. Sorry to butt in on you again, but in regards to disgust and materialism, is every time he shows a bit of disgust is when someone the prostitutes touch his watch, or he's like, don't use that robe. It's anytime someone he feels like is lower than him touches one of his prized material
and
possessions.
In a way, one of the times he feels disgust is when that guy Lewis, who he feels like is below him, when he had the body of Paul Allen in that bag, he's like, where did you get that overnight bag? He's like, and then he's like kind of saying it as he's like walking away. He's like, John Paul Gaultier. You know what I mean? And so I think, you know, everything just being a brand, these restaurants, you know, the suits, the bags, the whatever, you know, everything's just, it's just hollow and meaningless. And
Materialism.
yeah, materialism and capitalism is kind of just like destroyed a lot of people's individualities. And you know, I think that's you know, it's a pretty accurate statement on the world, honestly. And I love it. I think, yeah, Christian Bale. But yeah, no, Christian Bale, tour de force, man. It's like, it's carried by his performance. Like, you know, I'm not knocking the director or anything, but like the thing that sticks out to me in this watching of it, at least, is that it really is carried by him. Like, the people around him are, you know, acting well, they're acting, you know, good, but like Christian Bale, like, he like just honestly he doesn't say like a whole ton, like, acting wise. Like, he just like a lot of it's done through like almost like third person narration, right? And I don't know, the feel of this movie is like super eerie. I love how it's like set against like the super bougie class, you know, they're all like bougie as hell. The yuppie culture, you know?
The Wall Street world.
Right. Exactly, you know? And yeah, I've always really been like, yes, this movie is great. I was surprised that you hadn't seen it before, Van. Like, when we were going through like what movies we wanted to watch for a review, and yeah, this one it's always worth a rewatch. I've watched it so many goddamn times, but it's honestly just it really invokes a lot of feeling. For someone who doesn't feel, it invokes a lot of feeling in the viewer, you know. And I definitely would probably give it about a 9.5, damn near perfect. I think this movie's perfect. I really do. I think that the you know, the cinematography, like Van said, is really good. You know, the way the story flows is great. The way, like, how scenes the sequencing of scenes, like how, you know, like, he kills a girl with the chainsaw, and then like it cuts to him and he's at the restaurant drawing on the you know, on the placemat. You know, it's like it doesn't matter if it's real or not. Like, whether or not it's real, it doesn't matter. The point is that the facade is broken, you know, the mask has been lifted, you know, it's you know, he's gone too far. And but yeah, so great movie, honestly. Yeah,
We're all Patrick Bateman.
we all are.
And maybe we're all Paul Allen too.
No, I don't want to be Jared Leto. I don't want to be Jared Leto.
The
Fuck
character.
No, but still,
we're all Paul Allen. We're all Patrick Bateman.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us this week. We're out. Peace.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course, man.
A pleasure.
A pleasure as always. A good day
Join
to
us
you,
again.
sir.